He who knows how to be poor knows everything. To be happy, we must not be too concerned with others. The most precious of all possessions is power over ourselves. Bad men need nothing more to compass their ends than that good men should look on and do nothing. Problems worthy of attacks prove their worth by hitting back. All cruelty springs from weakness. Love ceases to be a demon only when he ceases to be a god. Doubt isn't the opposite of faith. It is an element of faith. In order to understand the world, one has to turn away from it on occasion. People hasten to judge in order not to be judged themselves. There is no comparison between that which is lost by not succeeding and that which is lost by not trying. Even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness, and the word happy would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. Health so far outweighs all other blessings of life that a truly healthy beggar is happier than a sick king. I am struck by how sharing our weakness and difficulties is more nourishing to others than sharing our qualities and successes. Never go to the past, not for happiness, not for justification, not for excuses. The world is what it is. You are what you are. Whoever fights can lose. Whoever doesn't fight has already lost. Life really does begin at 40. Up until then, you are just doing research. People cannot accept their own evil if they do not at the same time feel loved, respected, and trusted. Many people are good at talking about what they're doing, but in fact do little. Others do a lot, but don't talk about it. They are the ones who make a community live. When we love and respect people, revealing to them their value, they can begin to come out from behind the walls that protect them. The greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown. Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself, or from holding certain views which others find inadmissible. Thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge. A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. I have learned to seek my happiness by limiting my desires rather than attempting to satisfy them. He is happy whose circumstances suit his temper, but he is more excellent who can suit his temper to his circumstance. The first thing you have to know is yourself. A man who knows himself can step outside himself and watch his own reactions like an observer. Never complain of that of which it is at all times in your power to rid yourself. You will never be able to experience everything, so please do poetical justice to your soul and simply experience yourself. Hope is a good breakfast, but it is a bad supper. Without work, all life goes rotten, but when work is soulless, life stifles and dies. You will never be happy if you continue to search for what happiness consists of. You will never live if you are looking for the meaning of life. The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood. Just because you got away with a bad decision, it doesn't make it a good decision. Never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by stupidity. Time is but the space between our memories. As soon as we cease to perceive, this space-time has disappeared. We fall in love when our imagination projects non-existent perfection upon another person. One day, the fantasy evaporates, and with it, love dies. Only he who attempts the absurd is capable of achieving the impossible. If a man will begin with certainties, he shall end in doubts. But if he will be content to begin with doubts, he shall end in certainties. Man needs difficulties. They are necessary for health. Never have I dealt with anything more difficult than my own soul, which sometimes helps me and sometimes opposes me. Women wish to be loved, not because they are pretty or good or well-bred or graceful or intelligent, but because they are themselves. The first duty of love is to listen. The courage to be is the courage to accept oneself in spite of being unacceptable. If the path before you is clear, you're probably on someone else's. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Man can endure the hardest trials if he sees meaning in them. The whole difficulty lies in creating that meaning. The world is a tragedy to those who feel, but a comedy to those who think. Don't hold on to one who lies. You won't meet the one who's coming. Do not marry after 40, because marriage is not provided by nature. To realize that you are not your thoughts is when you begin to awaken spiritually. It is impossible to love and be wise. No man's knowledge here can go beyond his experience. What worries you masters you. Fairy tales are more than true, not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten. We live longer when we are too busy living. The point of the argument is not to defeat each other, but to understand each other. Things are only impossible until they are not. It's not your fault. Things are the way they are. There are more things likely to frighten us than to crush us. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Anger is an acid that can do more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than to anything on which it is poured. Fake love is mighty convincing in a world where real love is mighty rare. In order for the light to shine so brightly, the darkness must be present. We are like chameleons. We take our hue and the color of our moral character from those who are around us. Life is very short and anxious for those who forget the past, neglect the present and fear the future. Life, if well lived, is long enough.